Welcome, everybody, to the 5,556th meeting of the Rotary Club of Chicago. Rotary One is now in session. So we're going to move right into our announcements today. I'm going to start us off with a little bit of sad news. I hope you can share me in expressing our condolences to our longtime member, Jody Santaford, whose father, Henry Simon Santaford, recently passed away. For those of you who know Jody, I'm sure she would appreciate a message or a phone call or an email. So please send her some kind words. Also, we have included the obituary in the gyrator. There are some links in there to some organizations that would honor her father. So please consider contributing to those organizations. And in addition to that sad news, we have some happy news, which is the 116th birthday of the Rotary Club of Chicago. Thank you for all of those who attended the birthday party, the official birthday party last Thursday. I know it's not the same as a big in-person bash. No doubt next year at this time, we'll be back to the real thing and we'll make it bigger and better than ever. But thanks for those who attended the virtual birthday party. Thanks to Timo for organizing together with Cam. And actually, today happens to be the actual date of the birthday of Rotary. So for those who could not make the party on Thursday, I want to share with you a birthday message from our fearless leader, Holger Nack.
Every year on February 23rd, Rotary clubs around the world remember the legendary first Rotary Club meeting. The founding myth of Paul Harris and the three gentlemen he invited to his office in Chicago in 1905 always makes for an educational and entertaining look back at Rotary's beginning. At that first meeting, the basic structure that still define the Rotarian World Organization were already apparent. The different professions of the members, their different origin, and also their ties to different religions, and the emphasis on tolerance. This is one of the reasons why Rotary quickly spread to all parts of the world. A convincing idea led to a powerful organization which still inspires thousands for its work. And today, 116 years later, as president of this wonderful organization, I'm happy to send a message from the other side of the world to the Rotary Club Chicago #1 and to celebrate this birthday with you. Of course, Rotary opens opportunities, but more important is our everlasting theme, service above self. Thank you.
Great message. Thank you, Holger. So, in the interest of trying to make sure that our members, which are obviously the most important asset of Rotary globally and certainly within our club, to make sure that our members are here with us to stay and are getting the value that they want out of our club, our board has recently passed several different membership alternatives, in part to deal with some of the situations that we're going through with the pandemic and some of the financial challenges. The first is the Golden Wheel membership, which is formerly known as Easy Pay, which of course always includes lunches as part of the membership dues, but that's not really helping you very much during these Zoom meetings. And we want to make sure that people who do continue to be at that membership level are recognized and honored for what they're doing to help the organization continue to stay afloat from an operations perspective during this challenging time. So we're making sure that those members are highlighted, as you see in front of you today, also on our website. We will spotlight each of our Golden Wheel members once during the year to promote them and their business. And then we're also providing Paul Harris points and Chess Perry points, 50 per month for each, that help to get them towards their next fellowship level. So please do reach out if you're interested in upgrading your membership to that level. We also recognize that some of these, for some folks, this time is financially challenging. We're here to help. We want you to stay as a Rotary Club of Chicago member. If you're struggling to do that, please reach out to us. We have some alternatives here to help you get through that. We'd rather have you stay here as a member with us rather than drop away. I also want to speak to the importance of fellowship, especially in-person fellowship. I know, again, that's a challenging part of this pandemic. We were chatting about it a little bit before the meeting started. One way that we're going to dip our toe back into the water now that the COVID rates are better here in Chicago and declining, and the capacities within restaurants have been raised a little bit, is we're going to return to the roundtable, the Friday lunch roundtable at the Union League Club. So if you're really itching to get back and meet people in person, this is a great casual, informal way, pay as you go, show up between 12 and 12:30 at the Union League Club of Chicago for lunch. There's a table waiting for the Rotary Club of Chicago there. Just show up and there will be other people to meet you there for lunch. It's a lot of fun. So with all of those announcements, it's now time to move to our program. And to introduce our speaker today, I'm going to hand the floor over to our program's co-chair extraordinaire, Mr. David Hirsch. David, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce Alex Kotlowitz, a longtime Chicagoan and gifted storyteller. Alex is the author of 4 books, including the most recent, An American Summer, Love and Death in Chicago. He also wrote a national bestseller, There Are No Children Here, which the New York Public Library selected as one of the 150 most important books of the 20th century. And it was adapted as a television movie produced and starring Oprah Winfrey. While Alex's home is print, he's also worked in film and radio. His documentary, The Interrupters, a collaboration with Stephen James, premiered at Sundance in January 2011. He's a former staff writer for the Wall Street Journal. Alex's work has appeared in The New Yorker, The New York Times Magazine, and This American Life. In 2016, Alex worked with inmates at Illinois' Stateville Prison on essays about their cells. Their stories ran on the New Yorker's website, and the New Yorker's Radio Hour became the basis for the podcast Written Inside. Alex has been honored in all 3 mediums, including 2 Peabodys, 2 Columbia DuPonts, the Robert F. Kennedy Journalism Award, and the George Polk Award. He's also the recipient of 8 honorary degrees. Alex regularly gives lectures and talks around the country. He's been a writer in residence at the University of Chicago, a visiting professor for 7 years at the University of Notre Dame, a Montgomery Fellow at Dartmouth College, and a distinguished visitor at the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation. He's also a professor at Northwestern's Medill School of Journalism, where he's been teaching since 1999. Alex grew up in New York City and attended Wesleyan University. A year-long stint on a cattle ranch, he took his first journalism job at a small alternative weekly in Lansing, Michigan. He lives in Chicago with his wife, Maria. They have 2 children, Maddie and Lucas. And it's just a pleasure to have you join us today, Alex. And I've broken the questions that I'll ask before we open it up to Q&A for our audience into 3 categories. The first category is the craft, what you might refer to as your craft. The second will be questions around journalism. And then the third will be around the issue of poverty, which is something that has been a focus of a lot of your work.
Well, thanks for having me, David.
You're welcome. So I'm sort of curious to know, where did your interest in storytelling begin?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if I've been asked that before. So in some ways come by it honestly. My dad was a writer, a novelist, and our home was just filled with books. I mean, thousands of books. And so I grew up as an avid reader, and it's certainly, it got me through adolescence. I'll say that, and so I love a good story, and so the idea that I'm now able to be on the other side of that and to craft stories is this kind of, I feel for me, I kind of have this wondrous life in that way. But no question, it's for my love of reading, my love of books.
I was sort of curious to know who encouraged or served as a mentor to you when you were growing up and as you were getting your career started.
So I think in some ways my dad, though I would probably be loath to admit it when I was growing up, he and I kind of had a rocky relationship. But once I began writing in my 20s, he and I really connected. And I think in a profound way, his work really had a terrific influence on me. There are others as well. I mean, I was very fortunate to count Studs Terkel as a dear friend and as a mentor, and Studs, who kind of the grandfather of all history. Studs was, there's this kind of glib notion that Studs taught us all how to listen, but anybody who spent any time around him knows that Studs, he wouldn't shut up. He loved to talk. And I remember thinking to myself when I first met him, how is it that this guy gets people to talk with him? And I realized that he recognized that, the art of interviewing, the art of conversation is not some passive exercise, that it's this back and forth, it's this engagement. And so I really learned a great deal from him. And then there are other writers who, from Norman MacLean to Tony Lucas, to David Halberstam, people I've been fortunate to get to know, whose work has had a profound influence on my own.
Great. So how did you know, or when did you know that this was going to be a career as opposed to just something you might have an interest in? Right.
Well, so as you mentioned in the introduction, I was kind of well, you didn't mention this, but I was kind of a lost soul coming out of college, and I ended up getting a job at a cattle ranch out in Oregon, just this side of the Cascades. And I was there for a year, and I saw an ad for an associate editor at the small alternative news weekly in Lansing, Michigan. And so I ended up interviewing for it and taking that job. And I very quickly realized that if somebody's going to pay me to do this, this is what I wanted to do. I mean, the two things I loved about it is, it pushed me out into the world and kind of gave me license to spend time in communities other than my own and to hang out with people I otherwise would never meet. And the other part of it is then it allowed me to kind of hole up in my office or my office at my home and craft a story. And so I love this combination of being pushed out into the world and then having this time to myself to craft a story. And it was working at that paper. I didn't last very long. I was only there for 8 months, but it was there that I realized this is what I wanted to do. Is I wanted to tell stories, and in my case, nonfiction stories. Stories that are based in fact. It's kind of the never to be chiseled dictum in my craft that what we write has got to be authentic. It's got to be verifiable. John McPhee kind of unpoetically refers to it as the literature of fact, and that's how I think of this craft.
Yeah, well, you've had a lot of different experiences, but you seem to be attracted to the grittier side of what's going on in society, and I'm wondering why that is.
Yeah, I think, it's funny. I don't think of it as so much as that I'm attracted to the grittier side. I think what I'm attracted to is that I have this kind of, and I kind of, Studs really articulated this well, but I've got this sort of underlying belief that life ought to be fair. And so I find myself writing about places and moments and people for whom life isn't fair. And those often tend to be, I suppose, somewhat gritty situations because these are people who have often been pushed along to the margins, kind of neglected, if not forgotten. And so I feel like what draws me to the stories that I write about is this notion that I see this level of unfairness, of inequity, and And I write in the end out of a sense of anger. And I'm not a very angry person. And I think one of the challenges for me is that sometimes I feel so enraged that I've got to really consciously, when I sit down and put pen to paper, is be able to try to put that anger aside. Because I think one of the tricks of storytelling is not to, people don't need to know how angry I am or how sad I am. The trick is to get people to that place on their own.
I don't have a lot of experience writing, but I know one of the issues has to do with editing. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that aspect of your craft.
Yeah. So, I teach at Northwestern, and I tell my students right off the bat that one of the things that's most essential for any good writer is to have a really good editor. And I have been really fortunate. I've made a point of seeking out really good editors. They save me. They've made me a better writer. For my books, I've had the same editor for some 30 years, and Nan Lee is kind of the grande dame of publishing. And Nan, unfortunately, just retired. And so I'm sort of in search now of a new editor. But I've also been really fortunate to have people like Julie Snyder, who's one of the founders of the podcast Serial, and Vera Titunik, who was my editor for years at the New York Times Magazine. Having them at my side, and I can't tell you how reassuring that is as a writer. I mean, writing is a really painful, deliberate process, and it's also very solitary. And so it's really essential to have another set of hands, of eyes and ears on your work.
Great. So I was sort of curious to know, what was it like writing for the Wall Street Journal, which is a different publication from the others I'm familiar with that your work appears in?
Yeah. So I hired on at the Wall Street Journal, and if I'm being real honest, I thought I'd be there for 2 or 3 years, then move on. I had probably as good a job as one could have in journalism. Look, the editorial pages of the Journal are very, very conservative. They don't align with my worldview at all. But the beauty of that paper was, and still is that the editorial side is very separate from the journalistic side. And so it was a paper, especially when I was there in the 1980s, that really had a lot of faith in its reporters. And so it allowed I could disappear for a month or two at a time to work on a story. They had incredible faith that if I found a story that I felt was compelling and important, they trusted me. And I will tell you that in the 10 years that I was there, I never had them balk at a story that I wanted to do. And I was also there at this amazing moment in time when there were all these people who went on to, make a living as great writers, from the novelist Geraldine Brooks to her husband, Tony Horowitz, Ron Suskind, Jim Stewart, Brian Burrow. I could go on, Susan Faludi, I could go on and on. It was just and Eric Larson. It was an incredibly exciting time at the paper. And I loved my 10 years there. I tell people, I think as far as having a job in journalism, it was as good as it gets.
Thanks for the insights. Let's use that as a segue to talk about journalism. You've been a journalist for 40 years. How has the profession changed, and what are your biggest concerns?
Yeah. So it's funny, David, I always, when people ask me what I do for a living, I would always kind of maybe somewhat glibly tell them, people think of me as a journalist or an author, but I think of myself as a storyteller. I got to say, though, now, in this moment in time, I am so proud to consider myself a journalist. I think we're at a moment in time when journalism couldn't be more essential, when there's this kind of inability in this country to agree on even a set of facts. And it's what journalists do so well. I'm in awe of my colleagues at places like the Washington Post and the New York Times, who day in and day out, go in and for the most part get it right. And when they don't get it right, they admit to it. I have a really deep concern at the moment for what's happening in our cities and towns. I look here at my own hometown, Chicago. We're a place where we've long had 2 newspapers. The Chicago Sun-Times has held on, and but is a skeleton of what it once was. And the Chicago Tribune was just purchased by a hedge fund, which has absolutely no interest in practicing journalism, has a history of decimating the properties it buys. And it just last week purchased the Chicago Tribune and the other papers in the company. And I don't know how, as a democracy, we survive without a vigorous, robust local press. And I don't fully understand why civic leaders in Chicago haven't stepped up, especially when it was clear that the Tribune was up for sale, why nobody stepped up to try to save the paper. But I'm concerned that in 4 or 5 years, we may not have a newspaper in Chicago. And I think that's a pretty unsettling prospect.
Well, I understand that you teach a lot, so you're working with a lot of people that are perhaps interested in getting into journalism. And I'm wondering what type of advice you can offer them with the backdrop that a lot of these publications seem to be going away.
Right. Well, that's the big issue now, I think, in journalism schools. So what are the prospects for jobs if you want to get into this profession? So here's the thing. I think a couple of things that there are, in the absence of some of these newspapers, there are these digital sites that are popping up, the kind of a nonprofit model. I mean, the one that's probably been the most successful is the Texas Tribune in Texas. And so there are certainly jobs there. There's, as everybody knows, there's been a real renaissance in audio, in both radio and podcasting. And I think some of the best nonfiction storytelling is now happening in audio. So there are still jobs there. I still have students who go out into the world. I mean, it's one of the things I love about teaching is, many of the students I teach, I stay in touch with, have become friends. I've even been edited by a couple of former students. So there are jobs out there, and I think we need to figure that out. And it's going to be the job of this next generation to sort of figure out, in the absence of newspapers like the Tribune, what do we do? What do we create in that vacuum?
You made a passing reference to social media, and I'm wondering what platforms do you find most interesting, and are theirs that, I got a little tongue-tied, are there some that you've embraced as more of a traditional journalist? You
mean in terms of social media, David? Is that, or in terms of, because I think of social media as different from digital media. I mean, social media I think of as Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and I have very little presence in social media. I have a Facebook page, but I hardly use it. But there are some incredible digital sites. I mean, the New Yorker's website, for example, and the Atlantic's website is just exceptional. I read, there's a site called Atavis that does some incredible nonfiction storytelling, Literary Hub. I mean, there are places that I go to. And I'm an avid reader of the New York Times and the Washington Post every day, usually online. So there's still a lot out there, especially nationally. Again, it's locally that I'm most concerned. I wish we had something in Chicago. I wish we had a really robust presence on the web.
Well, practically speaking, how can a local media company, whether it's the Tribune, the Sun-Times, or other publications in their local media, compete in a digital global society like we have? Well,
I mean, I think in terms of business models, and I'm not an expert on this, but clearly, if you're running a newspaper, you've got to have a really strong digital presence. I mean, that's where you'll get your readers and your ad base. And the truth of the matter is that the business model at the moment isn't quite working, and it's why so many are pushing towards a nonprofit model, trying to get foundations and civic leaders. For example, one of the papers that was owned by the Tribune Company, the Baltimore Sun, it is not being purchased by this hedge fund. In fact, it's being purchased being made into a nonprofit. And so it's going to survive. It's going to survive as a nonprofit with the help and assistance, presumably, of the both the civic leaders and philanthropic community in Baltimore. And we need to see more of that. And I just sort of ask, if Baltimore, why not Chicago?
Yeah, so I guess it's a call to civic leaders in the Chicago area to step up and step forward. It's not as if we don't have a certain amount of wealth that would be available,
Right.
But I guess it has to do with somebody who has an interest, or a group of people that have an interest in doing that.
Right. I mean, I think if the Art Institute were about to go under, I mean, you would see people step up right and left to save that institution, as they should. And our newspaper is no less important than a place like the Art Institute, and in fact, maybe more essential to the daily lives of Chicagoans.
Do you think part of that, Alex, might be that the Art Institute is a place, it's a physical place that people identify with, and a newspaper, the Tribune, the Sun-Times, has less of a physical presence, right? It's intangible at some level. And I'm wondering if there's sort of a lack of identification from that perspective.
No, I think it's more that, journalists have taken a real beating over these past 4 years. I mean, under this previous administration, there was a choreographed assault on the media. Our former president, referred to us as the enemy of the people. And I will tell you that, going out in the world as a reporter now is a lot different than it was even just 10 years ago. I've been screamed at. I've been told to get out of people's offices. I've never been treated like that before. And it no doubt is because of this, again, choreographed assault on the press. And so I think that's what's probably made people reluctant to step in, is to sort of having to put themselves in that position. I have a T-shirt that says I am an enemy of the people, and I wear it proudly. But I will tell you that it's done a lot of damage.
Okay, well, let's not let this conversation devolve into politics. So we're going to switch gears and touch on our third topic before we open it up to questions, which has to do with the topic of poverty. And much of your work revolves around stories related to poverty. Your book, There Are No Children Here, really touched a chord in America. How did the reaction to that book influence your writing and your career for that matter?
So, that was my first book, and I was probably much more innocent than as a writer. And talk about writing out of anger. That was a book I wrote out of anger. I spent 2 years in public housing, and I've got to say, when I first went, my first few weeks in public housing, I felt this incredible deep sense of shame. Like, how is it I could not know? I ended up spending time in a public housing project, the Henry Horner homes, that were just a mile and a half from my office that was then downtown. And that shame quickly turned into anger. Like, how is it in the world's most prosperous nation, people are living in such dire circumstances? And of course, as I came to learn, as I researched the history of public housing in Chicago and elsewhere, it wasn't by accident. It wasn't that somehow these communities, which were predominantly Black, ended up so spiritually and physically isolated from the rest of us. And so I wrote that book out of a sense of anger. And I think for me, one of the rewarding parts of publishing that book, and I didn't know what to expect, is that I think readers, after reading that book, felt that same sense of indignant fury. And that's where I wanted them to land. And we didn't always agree, because I know this from having talked to people who've read it, including politicians. We don't always agree on the solutions, but I think there was a sense like, how could this be in the world's richest country? How is it we couldn't know? And then the other side of this too, which was unexpected, was that I also heard from readers who just said, "Thank you for telling my story." People who had grown up in similar circumstances. And it's one of the powers of storytelling, is it not only brings us places we wouldn't otherwise go, but it also kind of can affirm our own experiences. And I think that There Are No Children Here did that for some readers.
Yeah, well, you really did shine a spotlight on an aspect of society that most people would not come in contact with. Even if you lived in an urban area like we do in Chicago, you'd almost have to go out of your way, like you did, to understand or get an insight into what it was like to be in these housing projects. And the world has changed, like you said, a great deal since then. We don't have, for the most part, high-rise housing projects in Chicago, and it's mostly good, but not entirely good. It's like everything in life, it's not all good, it's not all bad. So my last question has to do with your recent book, An American Summer, Life and Death in Chicago, which is about violence, primarily about violence in Chicago. And what's the main message and what type of reaction have you received?
Right. So, I kind of see An American Summer as kind of a bookend to There Are No Children Here. I wrote An American Summer some 30 years later. And I think for me, one of the things that's been most unsettling is the stubborn persistence of violence, not only in Chicago, but in places like Baltimore, New Orleans, Philadelphia. I could go on. I mean, as violent as Chicago is, it's not even in the top 10 most violent cities in this country. And so I really, and I've long felt that we've completely underestimated and undervalued the profound impact that violence has on both the spirit of individuals and the spirit of community. And so the stories I tell in An American Summer are an effort to understand just that, what the violence does to the soul of people and to neighborhoods. And I try to do it in a way that doesn't point fingers, that doesn't, but really in the end, which I think is what storytelling aims to do, is to try to find empathy. And to also recognize that the violence is a result of a legacy of complete neglect of these communities. And that, we're talking about neighborhoods where the kind of window of opportunity is not only not widened, but in many cases narrowed. So, they're very personal stories I tell in the book, kind of stories that for me, what I was most looking for, I was looking for stories that surprised me, that knocked me off balance. And I hope that they'll do the same for readers.
Well, thanks for sharing. Those are my questions. Eric, I'd like to turn it back to you to open up the questions that might have gone through the chat or other questions that others might have.
Thanks.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thanks, David, and thanks, Alec. That was very, very, very interesting. Just remind people in the audience, if you do have a question, please type it into the chat box as we go along here. Somebody had a very specific question about something you said earlier about the ad for a job at a Lansing, Michigan weekly. Well, what was that in, and how did you happen to see it?
Yeah, so the ad was in, this is back when magazines had classified ads, which they no longer have, but it was an ad in Mother Jones magazine. And I saw this ad for, this is at a time when the alternative press in this country was really robust and vigorous. And this small newspaper, the Lansing Star, which had been founded by some former students at Michigan State University, was looking for an associate editor. It was a small operation. There were, I think, maybe 4 or 5 full-time editors and reporters. And so I went there, and that's where I landed. I landed 8 months. I ended up working, I ended up freelancing. I stayed in Michigan. I ended up working with Michael Moore. Michael was publishing a small alternative newspaper of his own up in Flint, the Flint Voice. And it was at places like the Lansing Star and the Flint Voice that I really sort of learned the rudimentary elements of this craft.
Question of my own here, as you talked about some of the books that you really dove deep into issues of violence, of public housing. I know that you focused on a lot of the stories and some of the, as you said, how it impacts the soul of a community and the individuals in that community. But through that work, did you discover effective solutions? Because we're Rotary, right? We want to know what can we do to actually affect change. Were there things that you saw consistently where you said, actually, this seems to work?
Right. Yeah. So there's a big debate, and I don't know if people kind of consciously think about this, but there's a big debate now in the violence prevention world There are those who feel that we've got to deal directly with the violence, that we've somehow have got to interrupt the violence before we can begin sort of rebuilding or restoring a sense of community. And then there are others who argue that, the violence is only a symptom, and that we really need to look at ways to address the profound distress and poverty in these communities. And I fall somewhere in between. I feel like we need to do both. And so there are programs out there. I don't write about them in my book. I mean, the truth of the matter, Eric, is that, and I write about this I'm very upfront about this at the beginning of the book, we haven't figured it out. If we had figured it out, we wouldn't be where we're at. And we had as you know, we had a miserable year last year in Chicago in terms of the violence, numbers that were approached what they were 25 years ago. But there are some programs out there. One of the programs that's actually run by one of the people I write about in the book, I don't write about the program, is called Ready Chicago, run out of Heartland Alliance. And what they do there is it's kind of a two-headed program. One, they provide jobs for young men, which there's nothing unusual about that, but it does speak to the, profound place of jobs in our lives. But the other part of it requires all these men to participate in what basically are group therapy sessions to deal with their trauma. And it's this remarkable program founded by a young man, Eddie Bocanegra, who has his own history with violence. And Eddie's now, he's been now helping advise the White House on how to begin to deal with the urban violence. And then there are programs, now there's I think we're sort of beginning to have a conversation again around the notion of issues of race and poverty and those inequities that exist throughout our country. And so I think if we can sort of direct our energy at both in trying to interrupt the violence in the moment and also trying to find a way to rebuild these communities and provide opportunity for people for whom opportunity has been closed off for far too long.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and it really mirrors a lot of the things certainly that we've been hearing and some of the programs that we've done as well. We have a lot of questions coming in now. You clearly struck a few nerves there. We got a lot of good questions coming in. Let's move to a few questions on your process. So what advice do you give your students about selecting topics to write about? Do you encourage them to follow your ethic as it relates to equity? And finally, do you have a strict writing routine, up at 5, watching the sunrise and so forth?
So with my students, basically what I tell them is follow their heart. I mean, write about what you feel passionately about. And what I tell my students is, don't pick subjects because they have to all do stories for my classes. Don't find stories because you think somehow it's going to interest me. Do it because it's interests you. And the truth of the matter is, if you feel passionate about something, and this is the challenge as a writer, you will find a way to make others passionate about that as well. But I also tell them, underscore for them very much the import of narrative, of having story and all the elements that make up a good story, not the least of which is having a protagonist, a group of protagonists who we come to care about. So I'm in the midst of teaching a class now and about to get the first drafts of their final papers, and I'm really looking forward to it. And some of them, are on subjects that really interest me, and others are on subjects that I don't innately have an interest in, but I know if they do it well, that I'll find myself immersed in it just as they were. And remind me the second part of that question. There's
do you encourage them to follow your ethic as it relates to equity?
Right, and you also asked me about writing routine. That was the other thing. Yeah.
Yes, writing routine.
Yes. No, and they need to find their own way. I'm not asking them to write necessarily for the same reasons that I do. Again, I just ask them to follow their heart, to write about what they feel passionate about. Yeah, as far as writing routine, so, I've got this bifurcated life where I spend half my time out in the world talking to people, which I love to do. And one of the things I love about this work is it gives me license to go places I otherwise might never visit. But when I'm writing, when I'm in the groove, I'm an early person. I get up reasonably early. I usually go for a walk or a run, and then I write best in the mornings and try to push through, till noon or so, and then try to reserve my afternoons to go back over drafts. I mean, one of the things about good writing is it means going back over and over and over your work. And so it's just this very deliberate, sometimes tedious process. But when I'm in the groove, I just, writing makes me feel alive. And sometimes it takes a while to get there.
Yeah. I can only imagine. A few more questions. I'm going to combine a couple of these questions, and they also sort of relate to process. It's clear that in the work that you do, you're listening a lot. You're also developing trust with the people that you're interviewing and that you're getting your information from. I guess first of all, how do you develop that trust, and how do you listen so well? And then how do we return to the day when listening and developing that trust with other humans was more valued across society?
Yeah, well, I'm with you on that. And let me just address the second part first, because I think really what you're asking is, how do we find empathy? I mean, that's really what listening is all about. And we are a country, I think, as you allude to, that where empathy is sorely lacking, sorely missing. And we have to work at it, to be perfectly frank. And I think one of the things about this country, and it's a great paradox, I think, of America, is that we like to think we're all in the same boat together, and yet we lead such disconnected lives. And so we have to make a real effort to find our way into communities other than our own. I've got license to do that. It's part of what I do, but I think all of us have to find a way to do that. And remind me the first part of the question, which is...
Well, I think it's how you basically are able to listen and develop that trust with your...
And so I'm, my feeling is, given what I'm asking of people to share their stories, not only with me, but to share them in this really public way, that it's really important that I be as straightforward as I can with people and open about what I'm doing. And I like to think that in the end, that when people pick up my books or my articles and they read about themselves, that there's nothing that surprises them. I miss, I make mistakes sometimes, but I try to be as open as I can with people. And one of the things I recognize, one of the questions people are asking, if not aloud, asking themselves, is what's in this for me? And I think everybody's got their own reason for sharing their stories. It could be because you feel like if you tell your story, it'll impact others in similar situations. If you tell your story, maybe it'll right a wrong, or maybe it's simply that nobody's ever come along and asked you about your life. And there's something incredibly affirming about that. But I try to be as much of an open book as I can with people.
Very good. Very good. And that makes sense, right? I mean, that's always a key to developing trust, is to be open with people, right?
Yeah, and I'm asking them to be open with me. So it's the least I can do. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. It's sort of somewhat symbolic of our own four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Right. That those types of premises. We got a question here that your father wrote a fictionalized memoir of his experiences as a soldier in World War II. Have you thought of writing a novel or memoir?
Yeah. So, let me just say, first of all, my dad did write a book, a memoir before their time. It's not fictionalized. It's actually it's a story about his experience in World War II, about going crazy. It's a beautiful, taut, profoundly emotional book. And my dad had this experience in World War II in which he was the lone survivor in his platoon after being ambushed by the Germans in France. And he went crazy, and he never spoke about it. As growing up, I kind of knew that he had some bad experience in the war. And it wasn't until his late 60s that he really had the strength and the fortitude to revisit that. And he went back and he found, went back and looked at the records. He, unearthed his memories, and so wrote this book about this experience in the war, which I can't recommend enough. I mean, one of the things I love about my dad's writing is its tautness. I mean, there's not a wasted word in his work. I think of that as well, like with somebody like Norman MacLean, who wrote this beautiful fiction, and that was a fictionalized memoir about called The River Runs Through It. So have I ever thought, yeah, I've thought about writing stuff about myself. I think writing about yourself is really hard. I think it requires a real level of honesty with yourself. And the other part of it is it means writing about people close to you. And I feel like that is something you can only do with their permission. So I've thought about it. I've certainly, and I've attempted my hand at fiction. I've got a novel that I had started a few years back that I think about returning to. And one of the things I learned very quickly in writing, trying my hand at fiction, is one of the things I love about writing nonfiction is I know the story because I've done all this reporting. And so I think if I'm going to write or attempt to return to this novel, I feel like I need a better grasp of where it's going. I know there's some novelists who kind of write, and the process of writing is figuring out the story, figuring out what happens to their characters. And I feel like if I'm going to do that, I sort of need to sort of replicate the process of writing nonfiction, which is kind of knowing where it's going beforehand.
Well, thank you very much, Alex. We have a lot of other great questions as well, but I'm afraid we're out of time here for today. But give everybody, please give Alex a virtual round of applause. I want to share with you, Alex, very little token of our appreciation for your being with us today. It's a candle.
Oh.
And what we do, because we're all about having an impact in the community and affecting lasting change here in Chicago, all proceeds from these candles go to an organization called Bright Endeavors. Mm-hmm. And their mission is to empower young moms by providing transitional jobs and professional skills training. One of the things that you talked about earlier is being effective. So this not only helps those moms, it supports their kids, and ultimately our communities. So you'll be getting one of those from us in the mail.
Well, Eric, thanks so much for having me. David, thanks for the terrific interview. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun. And it's always, I guess the other thing I should say in this moment in time, I hope we're at the end of this pandemic, but it's always good to be amongst others. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, the pleasure is definitely ours. Definitely ours. And we have some great programs coming up as well, which we may want to send your way also, because some of the things that you touched upon are being discussed by some of our future speakers, like Arnie Duncan, and his Chicago Cred, which goes to sort of mediation, peace, and
Arnie's doing great work out there, and then his program, like Ready Chicago, as you say, is dealing with trauma. So well, thanks,
exactly. Exactly. Pleasure is ours. All right. Well, thank you very much. We're going to move on with some other announcements here. Before we get to the introduction of our guests, I want to introduce another quick video here. This one with some birthday greetings from our future RI president, Jennifer Jones. Shelby, could you cue the video, please?
Hello, my friends in the Rotary Club of Chicago. I am so excited to be able to join you today to say happy birthday, happy 116th birthday. I had a lovely call from Marga asking if I would say hello to all of you. And it seems like only yesterday that I was able to visit your club and see all of you in person. It's actually been a couple of years. And I remember back on that day because I received a lovely thank you gift. I remember Cheryl and Connor conjured up a dog leash for Gracie, my dog. And we still use that absolutely every single day. And I think of you guys quite often. President Eric and President-elect Marga and Timo and Aletta, the leadership chain of your club, I know that great things are in store for you. And while it has been a challenging year for everyone, you have such a bright future. 19 new members, I understand, that are coming into your club. And I also heard the incredible project that you did with over 1,000 meals shared to your community, to first responders. Of course, the #1 club in the world doing the #1 kind of projects. Congratulations to all of you. I look forward to the day when we can be together in person once again, and hopefully that will be very soon. But until then, celebrate this birthday, and as the first club in the world, just keep doing what you're doing because you do it well. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. So now we get to the part in our program where we get to introduce all of our wonderful guests that have joined us here today, and we have many. So I just ask that you be very brief, introduce your name, your profession, and tell us, if you're a Rotarian, tell us what Rotary Club you are from. And I'm really just going to run through the participant list on my window here. So when I call your name, please unmute yourself. And we're going to start with Bill.
Yeah, hi, Eric. Glad to be back. Bill Ballou with the Chicago Lakeview. I'm president-elect of the club there. I'm a past district governor from Nebraska. I'm retired, and a lot of, I guess what I'm doing is enjoying Rotary and coming up with different Rotary projects and working on various things. So thanks very much for the program.
You bet, Bill. I'm glad that's what you're doing with your time. It's a great use of your time. It's always
Thank you.
Great to see you. Anna Del Muño, could you please introduce yourself? Anna, you may be on mute. Go ahead, Anna.
Hello?
Anna? Yes, you're live. Yep.
Yeah, the light is not that bright. I can move a little bit. Here I am. Okay.
There you go.
Good evening to everyone. I am actually from Italy. I study in Milan, and I was an exchange student in Palatine back in 2015, 2016. And I feel really fond of Rotary, and I can't wait to be back in the States for a visit to my club, to my hosting club, the Rotary Club of Palatine. And my former exchange counselor, Jamie, suggested that I join the meeting today. And I am really glad that I had this opportunity.
Fantastic. It was an honor to have you on today. And like you, I'm waiting for COVID to go away so I can make a trip back to Italy, which I also think of very fondly. So feel free to join us anytime, Anna.
Thank you.
Our next guest
Thank
is...
you very much.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Our next guest is Bob Becker from Paw Paw Lake.
Hi, I was very glad to be at this meeting. Alex had written a book about two of the towns in our area. The other side of the river has to deal with issues with Benton Harbor and St. Joe. I am a Rotarian. I'm retired, and my only claim to fame is my daughter Jenny is the managing editor of the Rotarian.
Oh,
Or as we call it now, Rotary Magazine.
very good. Then I think I know who your daughter is. So wonderful. Thanks for joining us, Bob.
Yeah, she's the one that hooked me onto this meeting today. She sent me a heads up.
Oh, very good. Well, then I'll have to send her a thank you note for that.
Okay.
Very good. Take care, Bob. Our next guest is Donna Cole. Donna, please introduce yourself.
Are you home? No, I took it off. My husband is here with me. We're both watching. We were at a bonfire in honor of Henry Sanford. So we had asked, Jody we've known her since she was a little girl. Nice. Asked her to give us a link to your meeting. My husband is a Rotarian in the Houghton Club, and I'm in the Hancock Club.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining. I hope the bonfire went well.
Oh, it was a beautiful day. Yes, it went very well. And so
that's great. That's great. Well, please give Jody our regards when you see her.
We will.
Thank you. Thanks for joining. Our next guest is Mats Ingemansen. Could you introduce yourself, Mats?
Yes, thank you. I'm a past district governor from New York and Bermuda, and I am a former chairman of Rotary Global History Fellowship. And when you celebrated 100 years, I was the main speaker at your meeting. And currently I'm the chair of Rotary Grassroots Peacemaking. And tomorrow morning, I'm actually going to give a speech at the Rotary Club of Overland, Missouri, which you can watch on Zoom. But I really enjoyed your meeting. I thought it was very interesting. So, and I always like to check in with your club from now and then.
Yeah, good to see you again, and thanks for joining. And if you can send the link to that meeting tomorrow to myself or to our administration, or even just post it in the chat box, that'd be great. Or however we can register.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's see. We have Rob Steinberg from Palatine.
Hi, Eric. I'm president of the Palatine Club, COVID president, and I was a real surprise to see Anna join us today. She was a wonderful exchange student. We miss her, and I hope her and her family are well. I'm looking forward to attending your installation meeting. Last year I didn't, of course, and Margot's installation. I wish everybody in your club well, and when you start meeting again, maybe I'll attend.
Excellent. Well, I love to hear that. And I remember us meeting at Pets back right before everything shut down for COVID. So good to see you. Thanks for joining our meeting today. Let's see, who else do we have on our guest list here? Quite a few guests with us here today. Amy Hopkins. Amy, please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. I'm Amy Hopkins with the Rotary Club of Chicago Lakeview. And outside of Rotary, I am an elementary and middle school principal. It's great to visit everyone today.
Always good to see you. And I have to get myself to a Lakeview Rotary meeting here soon enough as well. So,
we missed you, Eric. Come on by.
All right. Thanks, Amy. Let's see. Our next guest, at least on my list here, is Cliff Wilson. Cliff, could you introduce yourself, please?
Cliff Wilson. I'm Nancy Kolchbrenner's brother, and so I've guested, and I'm a former South Loop member. And today's topic was of great interest to me. I work with people who buy and sell apartment buildings, and this 2021 is going to be quite the year for people in that business.
Indeed, it will be.
And I really enjoyed today's program.
Well, very good. Well, thanks so much for joining, and you're welcome anytime. Our next guest is Jill Brickman. Please introduce yourself, Jill.
Hi, I'm past president of the Rotary Club of Glenview Sunrise and chair the Peace Fellowships for District 6440, as I have for a number of years. So Alex's topics are of special interest. I've enjoyed all of his books. I was a volunteer teacher at an agency on the West Side. I taught homeless men for many years. So I heard firsthand about some of the issues that he addresses. And I also spend a fair amount of time in the Benton Harbor, St. Joseph, Michigan area. Professionally, I'm an elected official and currently running a food pantry that serves about 1,000 families a month.
Wow. Well, thanks for all the great work that you do, Jill, and thanks for joining us here today. You're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
Our next guest is Carrie Goleb. Carrie, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, hello. I'm Kari Goleb from Sweden, Stockholm, and I have very much enjoyed this meeting. I work as a financial manager here in Sweden.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Carrie. Appreciate it. We have our old friend, Liz Goggins, who also has an announcement for us today. Liz, you're up.
Hi, Eric. Hi, everyone. And I want to say hello to Matt because we have been Facebook friends for a long time. And this is the first time I've ever seen him on screen. So, hi, how are you?
Hi.
Tomorrow, I'd like to invite everybody. Tomorrow evening, we have past Rotary International President Barry Razin, who, is from our district here in the Caribbean. He is going to be speaking about the future of Rotary. Really fascinating topic. I did attend one previous session that he did. A lot of things being discussed, and I particularly like the fact that Barry wants people to know about everything before it goes to council and legislation or any place else, and he wants input. So tomorrow night, he'll be our guest speaker. It is going to be at 6:30 Atlantic Standard Time, which is our time here in the Caribbean, which I believe 6:30 will be 4:30 in Chicago. So I do have my email and the link to the meeting in the chat, and I'll share that now. And if you want to email me, I can send you the information directly. I hope everybody can join us.
Thank you very much, Liz, and thanks for sharing that with us today.
Sure.
Our next guest is Liz Thomas. Liz, could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, I'm Liz. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. I have more problems with my microphone at work, and I forgot I didn't test it because I haven't spoken at all yet. So I'm Liz Thomas. I'm with the Rotary Club of Palatine. Pretty new member, but already the secretary. And so then I work by day as a recreation therapist. And so I run programming for children and adults with disabilities, and I'm more on the fundraising side now.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for joining us today, Liz. I'm sure you'll be president in no time. Don't worry. Let's see. We have Bonnie Sanchez from the Near South Planning Board and Rotary Near South. Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Eric. And I'm so happy. I had another meeting scheduled and that canceled. So I was like, yay, I get to join. I am Bonnie Sanchez Carlson, and I am the immediate past president of the Rotary Club of Chicago Near South. I'm also the founder of the Chicago Coalition Clubs, and I am the Assistant District Governor Coordinator for District 6450. And I was excited to join today. So thank you, Eric, for sharing the link, because I have a connection to Alex Kotlowitz. Our organization, I am the president of the Near South Planning Board, and we honored Alex Kotlowitz with the Hero Washington Literary Award, which was the last award given in 2019 because COVID hit. So I know Alex really well, known him for many years, so it's always great to hear him speak. And I think it was also in 2019 that the Rotary Club, Rotary One, was involved with our Printers Row Lit Fest. So, we're aiming and fingers crossed that we will be hosting our event on September 11th and 12th, the weekend after Labor Day. So I'll connect with Eric to see about volunteer opportunities for your club and other clubs. So thank you so much for being here, a repeat visitor, and look forward to being back. And happy birthday, Rotary.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. And I love the Printers Row Lit Fest. So looking forward to that this year. Did I miss any other guests that I failed to introduce? I saw in the in our Facebook Live feed, because we're always on Facebook Live as well, Victoria Trimble from the Lithuanica International Rotary Club, which we helped charter, sent birthday wishes. We also have viewers from London, Argentina, Italy, and Bangladesh. So hello to everybody out there who's watching us live on Facebook right now. So we have a lot of announcements today, but it's all good stuff. We obviously wanted to have enough time to talk to all of our old and new friends that are with us here today. So we may run a few minutes late, but let's see if we can get through all of our announcements today. Starting with our district. Apply for a position to run for the district board of directors. So at the end of this Rotary year, there's 3 director at large vacancies. Reach out to Ade Onayemi or reach out to anybody at the office, and we can get you connected if you're interested in applying for that position. There's also a link in the chat box right now. We had some great volunteer opportunities this last week. thank you for all of those folks who came out to help with the Rotary Reading Room. You see a few screenshots there in front of us. We had 3 events last week, and people like Sarah Buck, John Alberts, Lisa Russ, Marshall Smith, Michelle Stewart, Jody Stawicki, and Ritika Tudmila from our Interact Club all stepped up to help with those 3 events. We're going to have more of those coming up on March 18th and March 27th. It is a super easy way to do service. Even if you're not comfortable stepping out of your home, you don't have to step out of your home. All you need is Zoom and a good book, age appropriate for children between the ages of 4 and 7. And it's 30 minutes or less of your time. I also want to thank folks who have come out over recent weeks to help out with our ongoing Meals for Seniors program. I know Jennifer Jones mentioned over 1,000 meals. I think we're up to close to 2,000 by now. Volunteers came out, not part of our club, but I hope that they join our club soon. Courtney Noble, Danusha Santakumar, and Bogdana Sardek came out in the past. Unfortunately, this week, this Friday, our Meals for Seniors will be canceled, but it is still on the books for all of our future Fridays. So if you're interested, go to the calendar, sign up. It's every Friday at 5:30 p.m. At Maple Point Apartments in the Gold Coast. We also have, speaking of service and some great programs that we're initiating here, we have an exciting new program to really support the educational focus area of our community service committee. Sarah, would you like to give us the 20-second rundown on our CPS opportunity grants?
20 seconds. Okay. Hello, everybody. I am the co-chair of the Community Service Committee for Rotary 1 Chicago. And one of our main focus this year is on education. So we came up with the idea to provide an opportunity for CPS teachers to earn a grant that can be up to $5,000. So we formed a subcommittee on our regular committee and fine-tuned the application. It is posted on the Rotary 1 website. It's also making its round through social media. And so if you know anyone or you are a CPS teacher, please feel free to forward that information. It's Tamara put the link to it in our chat box. It's also making its rounds. I've gotten some emails already, and it's only been out for a couple days. So I'm either going to be in over my head or we'll see. But I'm excited to see where it goes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. I think we're all truly inspired by this program. This is going to make a big impact. We've set aside a lot of resources from the Community Service Committee to be able to fund these grants. I think we're going to make a pretty big splash with this one. So I appreciate everything that you and the Community Service Committee are doing here with this project. I want to also talk about another opportunity. This is not a volunteer opportunity, but it's a fellowship, exercise, and fundraising opportunity. It is the Shamrock Shuffle and the Rotary Club of Chicago team. I know Nellie, who's on with us today, was signing up for that. Natalie, I'm going to sign up. Meetha signed up. I'm sure we're going to get Marshall and David Hirsch, our stalwart runners, signed up for this as well, if they're not already. But basically, you sign up for this. It's $30 a person. You get some swag. And because of COVID, basically, you get to run or walk or however you want to do it at your own pace in your neighborhood, or meet up with a friend and walk around until you've completed it. If you could put the link for that, Tamara, into the chat box. I know I saw Nellie's note that she's looking for that, so we'll put that right in the chat box there. And there's also a way, if you're not interested in running, you can still support the Shamrock Shuffle team, and that's on the annual campaign page. One of our other great programs, as if we don't have enough, is the Job One program, which has been around now for close to 20 years. We obviously use this as a way to, and this is something that Alex touched upon in terms of really sort of helping build job skills and give young individuals jobs. This is our job skills training program. Anybody who's had these interns, Nellie as well, will certainly tell you this, that our interns are fantastic. We do the job skills training, we get them ready to go, and then we connect them with paid internships throughout the city of Chicago. And at the end of that, there's also scholarship opportunities. If you know students in the city of Chicago who may be interested, juniors or seniors in high school, send them our way. More importantly, if you know employers who could use a fantastic intern during the summer, that is most appreciated. Marga, if you're on, can you give a 15-second update on the annual campaign?
Of course, Eric. Well, here I am. My role is to ask you to contribute to our foundations. As you know, we have two of them, the Rotary One Foundation and the Rotary International Foundation. But before I go on, I want to say thank you very much to all of you who have contributed already. And I look forward to hearing from those who are still thinking about it. There are two things I want to tell you. You can pledge or you can make a contribution. So just go to the top of our website or with a new format, and you know you're going to find the place where you can click and make your donations to one or both of foundations. So thank you so much for your support. You know we need your support to make things happen, so our list of projects can continue to grow. Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Marga. Perfect. Thank you very much. Before I go into other Rotary meetings, I also wanted to just point out, I saw that Nellie put into the chat box that A Safe Haven also has their run in the summertime. So if our Shamrock Shuffle gets you warmed up, then make sure you sign up for her run to end homelessness as well. There are a ton of meetings coming up. Please check your gyrator. I'm not going to go through all of them here today. Many clubs are having many great meetings. You can find them, like I said, in the gyrator. Just a couple I want to touch upon. The Black Experience in Rotary. That is a meeting from Rotary International. It's on Thursday, February 25th at 3 p.m. I will be joining that. It's part of their Rotary International's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion campaign. Also, Region 36 of the Rotary Foundation is also on February 25th, talking about Rotary Peace Fellows and Peace Centers. And that's important if you or anybody you know is interested in applying for a Peace Fellowship. A Peace Fellowship is a fully funded fellowship to develop leaders in peace in terms of skills, peace building. You can learn more about it at the Peace Fellows and Peace Centers presentation on February 25th. In terms of our own club's upcoming meetings, we always have our committee meetings as always. These are on the calendar. You can sign up there. A few that are not normally on the calendar, but I want to draw your attention to are the Woman of the Year Committee this Thursday, February 25th, and the Job One Committee also Thursday, February 25th. As always, we need your help with those two big efforts. And then, as always, board meeting, community service, international service, and PR marketing committee are all on the calendar. Please join for those. In terms of upcoming meetings for our club and for our members, as I mentioned at the top, but I'm going to mention it again, we have our Friday roundtable at the Union League Club. It has been reinstated. There will be a table there on the 4th floor, February 26th at noon. Show up between 12 and 12:30 and meet your fellow Rotarians for a casual lunch. And then we have on March 2nd, Rotary After Work. My good friend, George Smith, who's the co-founder of the National Society of Black Engineers, is going to tell us a little bit about Black engineers, scientists and inventors in American history. It is a very exciting program. I can tell you that I've seen it before. On the 9th, we have Michael Strautmanis, the Vice President of Civic Engagement at the Obama Foundation. And he's going to discuss the Obama Foundation and Presidential Center, which has made a little progress as of late. And if you want to make sure that you're not forgetting about these meetings, you should be getting texts from us for members. This is a members-only service. If you're not getting a text from us, please let us know. It means we don't have your cell phone in our records. You can also click the link that's going in the chat box there, and you can put your cell phone in there, and we will get you set up with that. So thanks for everybody who has stuck with us to the end. Of course, this brings us to our 4-way test. And I would like to ask one of our international guests with us today, Carrie Goleb from Sweden. I see you're still on. Would you like to read for us the 4-way test of the things we think, say, or do? It's shown on the screen here. Would you like to read that for us today?
You want me to read everything?
Yes, if you could, please.
The 4-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First, it is the truth. Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendship? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you so much, Carrie. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks to all of our other friends and guests who have come to see Alex speak today. And with that, meeting adjourned.